Good afternoon and welcome to On Track GP for our first qualifying round of the season. Sam, Planet F1 specialist.
Thank you, yeah. What a privilege, what a title. Looking forward to it.
A good intro. You are joining us today, thank you very much. But before we actually even start to talk about this, for anyone who is new to F1 or just needs a refresher, what is the purpose of qualifying?
Right, so when you look at a grid on the Sunday, obviously all the cars are lined up and you might be wondering, how do they get like that? And that's the point of qualifying, it's to determine who starts where on the grid. So the idea is that all the drivers do a lap and the quickest of that lap starts at the front and you work all your way down to P20, which is the last driver. So yeah, you sort of have 3 stages of qualifying. So you've got Q1, which gets rid of the 5 slowest drivers, and you've got Q2, which gets rid of the next 5, and then you have Q3, which is often the most important and the most exciting part, is when the top 10 get decided. So while Q1 and Q2 are interesting, a lot of people are really looking forward to the Q3 part of it.
So we're going to see all of that in
this hour. Around an hour, if there's not any red flags or anything like that, it should take about an hour to get that all done.
Okay. Shall we have a little look at kind of what happened in practice yesterday? We are in Bahrain for this race. Fernando Alonso, we were talking about him the other day on the preview show, and Aston Martin as well, and we were kind of saying we've got high hopes for Aston Martin from what we saw in testing. Alonso split the Red Bull drivers, didn't he?
Yeah, he did on the first, and then it's been even more impressive this morning. Like he went top in FP3, which is, considering Aston Martin were P7 last year, it's just an amazing improvement, really. So I think everyone's sort of waiting to see if the Red Bulls are holding stuff back, if this Aston Martin is really that quick, and hopefully that's what we're going to find out in the next hour or so.
In terms of holding things back, why did teams do that? Because you think they want to get everything out in testing?
Yeah, I suppose you sort of just don't want to give away how good you are, really. You don't want to show your rivals sort of what you're aiming for. F1's very secretive. They like to keep everything under wraps until the absolute last moment. We saw it during the car launches, so when these cars came out, a lot of them looked nothing like what we're going to see today. And that's all just, we don't want teams to know what we're good at, we don't want teams to know which parts on our car are good, and it's just like that, really. So while Alonso tops the final practice, I think there's still every expectation that the Red Bull car is the strongest, and we'll sort of see that as they lower the fuel amounts, as they get the right setup, and then, yeah, they get ready for the actual qualifying itself.
Yeah, well, we mentioned that he was second fastest in FP1. He went fastest as well, as you mentioned earlier on, ahead of Verstappen by 0.16, and the car is looking strong. In terms of Aston Martin, I think that I was reading something the other day about what they feel they can do this season. They think they might be able to challenge for that 3rd spot, which potentially would be Ferrari or Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge ask. I think this year is really much about improvement for Aston Martin. I think obviously they ended P7 last year and they just want to really push on from that. I think while they might be aiming for P3, I think P4 is sort of a more realistic place for them to fight alongside Alpine and maybe McLaren as well. So yeah, it's obviously a massive improvement. They themselves have been sort of steady not to over-excite themselves, really, and make sure people know that they're still aiming for P4, P3, not to win every race.
Yeah, okay. Some people in the chat already. Marcus says, good afternoon all, big birthday on Tuesday. Come on, Hamilton, give me a birthday treat. Vanch said, hi people, let's go Charles. The football enthusiast says, Max will be champion again this year. Tiz says, so excited for this season. Aston Martin to get a podium in qualifying. What do you reckon about that?
That's a fair shout. Yeah, I mean, if Alonso's finishing first in practice, then there's every chance he could get a top 3. But like I said, it's really this. We'll sort of know as the hour goes on just how good that Aston Martin car really is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to kind of consider this season as well, especially for Alonso. I mean, we feel like everyone's talking about Alonso.
Yeah, he's definitely been the biggest talking point so far. But that's sort of just who he is, really. He's obviously such this massive character, 2-time world champion. He made this big move from Alpine to Aston Martin, which a lot of people thought was a step down at the time, and obviously it looks currently like it's been a great move, which is not something we've said often about Alonso's career so far. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how that goes over the season. Really.
There's a lot of chat about Mission 33. So do we think if he completes that, how much longer can we see him being in the sport?
Well, he's got a 2-year deal with Aston Martin right now, so that'll take him, I think, roughly, he'll be 43 years old when he's in that last year. And obviously, that's crazy numbers for a driver. Like we saw Sebastian Vettel retire last year at 35. So the fact that Alonso's still racing now is is really impressive, and it's even more impressive that he's still competing at the very top. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about this Mission 33, which is obviously sort of was El Plan with Alpine, has moved up a few levels to be Mission 33, and it does seem like this season of all seasons is the most likely that he might get that 33rd win. Whether he can compete for a championship seems a bit of a step too far, but that might be something they're looking for next year. But that's always been his aim, is to be in a quick car and get back further up the grid.
With Aston, I mean, do you think that the cost cap is helping someone like Aston Martin?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's sort of something we're going to see more this year, because it came in 2020, 2021 was the first year of the cost cap. So obviously the 22 cars the first time that was felt. But even then, the bigger teams were starting with such a massive advantage that it was always going to take a while for the smaller teams, not that Aston Martin are small, but just smaller than Red Bulls and Ferraris and such. But it was always going to take a while for them to catch up. So maybe we are going to start seeing that more this year. And we can't forget as well, Aston Martin is a team that's done massive investment in themselves. They've got this huge new base being built at Silverstone that Lawrence Stroll's put several hundred million, I can't remember what the exact figure is, into that base. So yeah, like they put the money behind, and now they are helped by that cost cap for sure.
Yeah, because we were talking the other day on the preview about a team like Williams. You know, in testing they looked far more competitive than they have done before. Haas, another one that's looking that they could potentially break more into that mid-table side and change their luck. So you'd have to say that even though it's only been implemented a little while, you're starting to see those changes.
Yeah, definitely, and it's also to do with the regulations. So in 2022, the cars look completely different from what they did the last year, and the purpose of that was to make for better racing. Like, now these cars are able to follow behind each other much closer, and that does produce much better racing. So I think, yeah, as I mentioned with the cost cap, it's similar to the regulations that we'll sort of see the average speed of the cars bunch up a lot more as the years go on, really. So yeah, Haas are beneficiaries of that as well, definitely.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what's happening with Haas this season. I always keep one eye on them. I've got a soft spot. The football enthusiast said, Abby, who are you rooting for? I am a Red Bull fan, so at least I'll get some success potentially with F1.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully,
yeah.
More so than football. But I do like Ferrari, which is weird to say that I could like another team that's also challenging.
I think everyone has a soft spot for Ferrari. They don't know. They obviously that historic team. I think if you think of Formula One, it's often Ferrari you think of. So I think Sebastian Vettel said it once that even the Mercedes fans are Ferrari fans. So yeah. I don't feel too bad.
And they're also just like classic. Like when I think of F1, I think of Ferrari.
Yeah,
like heritage.
Think of a red car. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love Red Bull and I love Max Verstappen. I really like Christian Horner as well, and I really like Checo. So that's for me why I went with Red Bull, but I definitely really like Ferrari as well. So if anyone was not going to win the constructors or drivers, I would want it to be someone from Ferrari. Lots of you in the chat. Abdullah says, come on Ferrari. AW said he didn't expect to see me here, but then again, I need to get my mind off Spurs. You're right. If let me know the Tottenham score as well in the chat today, please. Black Shadow Monkey said Red Bull is the best, and Tiz says, what's your thoughts on liveries? What's your top three?
Oh, good shout. I like the Alfa Romeo. I like the black of Alfa Romeo. Sort of hoping more for Williams. They had this big partnership with Golf, which we saw with McLaren the last few years at Monaco. They had this lovely blue, I can't remember, duck egg blue, very light blue, sky blue, and it was lovely. And you thought, oh, maybe they're going to do something more with that. The Mercedes, again, I've always been a fan of the black Mercedes. So yeah, I think, have I said three? Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, so three sort of teams. I think Red Bull's obviously as it was every year, so there wasn't much change. But yeah, those are those three that stand out.
Okay, all right. I want to talk about Red Bull quickly. They had a pretty faultless pre-season, and also in testing they looked amazing. But Verstappen, he was talking on the radio early during that practice session, saying that the car was jumping around a lot more than testing. Why would that be?
That's something that only those inside the Red Bull garage will fully know. But there were rumours that they'd raise the ride height a little, which obviously is going to make it a bit more bouncy. But whether they were just trying out a different strategy and it hadn't quite worked, and that was something they were going to do in practice, but we're not going to see it in qualifying. But also, I think the fact that that's the only thing that Red Bull are not even complaining about, just mentioning
just commenting on
it sort of shows that their car's very good. I mean, it's not like he's saying my engine keeps cutting out. If it's wobbling a little bit, that's fine. And I think we can't forget that this time last year that both Red Bulls ended the race not crossing the line. So if they managed to get reliability from the off, and that's really important for them.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because when you watch it, if you're not a fan of F1 and you just like kind of come in and out, you think to yourself, like, you've had all this time to prepare the car. So why is it once the car starts going that the engine fails, or something happens? Why is that? Because obviously no one can drive the car other than those drivers.
F1's very strict about how much track time you can have. So to be very basic, when the teams are designing the car, each team gets a different amount of time in the wind tunnel, and that depends on the Constructors' Championship. So obviously we heard a lot about Red Bull. They lost some of their wind time last year, but you don't get a huge amount on time on track, which is why testing is so important for the teams. And if we go back to last year again, that was sort of why the porpoising problem really caught a lot of teams out. They just didn't. This wasn't something that's coming up in the simulations. They just weren't ready for it, and you don't get that much time to prepare for it. And going back to the budget cap, like, it's not like you can spend millions and millions to try and fix it, because you'll break that budget cap. And like Red Bull, you see you're going over the limit and you get penalties for that. So yeah, even though, I mean, it's one thing to design a car in a garage in a controlled environment. It's another thing entirely when you're in a race and
it's not like a regular car.
It's not like a Ford Mondeo. Like, these are very highly tuned cars that could easily go wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. I want to talk about tyres as well, because to be fair, tyres, you think, okay, it's a tyre, but there are so many different compounds and so many different tyres that are variable in this sport. So maybe just let everyone know the different types of tyres and what we can kind of see here in Bahrain.
Yeah, so for every track, so Pirelli supply all the tyres. For every track, they'll give 3 sets of dry tyres. So that's when the track's dry. Obviously, there's the intermediates and the wets for when it's raining, so the intermediates are slight rain, wets are full when it's tipping it down. But if we go back to the soft tyres, there's the soft, which is the red, there's the medium, which is the yellow, and there's the white, which is the hard. So what they mean is the soft will be the quickest, but it will degrade much quicker, and you won't get through many laps, whereas hard's more durable, but it's slightly slower. So one of the big strategy things for the teams is working out their tyre strategy, because they want to, if say the hard tyre doesn't degrade at all, really, that's obviously going to be a very good tyre, because it means you could potentially have 1 pit stop while other teams have 2, and you're saving yourself a lot of time on that. Or you could go for an aggressive strategy and sort of say, okay, we're going to have 2 lots of soft and then the mediums. So, and we should also point out that there's an F1 rule that says you must use at least 2 different types of tyres. So it's not like a team could bung on the hard tyres and go the whole way around the race. Like, you have to come in, pit, and change tyres. So yeah, whether it's a strategy if they go from the softs to the mediums, that's something the teams will decide, depending on the track as well, because the temperature of the track and maybe how the track is, sort of what turns there are, how sharp they are, that'll have a big impact on the various tyres on the car.
So what can we expect to see today, maybe for the majority?
Yeah, obviously it's in Bahrain, it's hot, so that's another thing. Even if we're racing at night, like, it's still a very high temperature, so you can sort of expect that tyres are going to degrade quite a lot. I mean, in qualifying it's not too important, because they'll all just use the soft tyres mostly. Like, you get a set amount of tyres for a weekend and you have to give some back to Pirelli, so teams are very wary of which tyres they use when. So in qualifying they don't want to use up all their soft tyres, because that means they won't have any for the race. But generally in qualifying they'll all be on the soft, because that is the quickest tyre, and there's no real concern, because they're just doing 1 lap or like 1 or 2 laps, so it's not, you're not worried about it degrading to a point where you can't use it. So yeah, it's just all about speed. Okay,
interesting. Anyone has any questions, make sure you send them through to us, and we'll be sure to answer them. I think we're getting underway shortly, aren't we?
Yeah, the drivers in the car by the looks of it, yeah.
Yeah, not too long, very exciting. Let us know who you think is going to come out on top in the qualifier. Back to the chat. Let's see what else you guys are saying. AW said the Honda Red Bull livery is the best. Newark Production says, do you think Ferrari's strategy will change and will allow them to finally get back to glory?
I think that's the plan. I think there was a change in strategy leadership last week, so I think we've obviously got Fred Vasseur coming in as well, so he's going to have a bit of an authority. And yeah, if there was a problem for Ferrari last year, it would be strategy. Like, they definitely had some errors in them, so whether they can fix that early on, we'll see, really. Something that only pan out as the races go on, really.
Yeah, well, there's another chat here from AW who said, how do you think Fred Vasseur will do at Ferrari?
It's a difficult one to say, because obviously he's very experienced. He's been at Sauber for a long time, but I think I mentioned in the preview show that being at Ferrari is just a completely different challenge. Like, you've got a whole country behind you, which is good and bad if you have a bad race. But yeah, it's a very big challenge. He's obviously very experienced. He knows what he's doing, so it's just sort of whether he can handle the challenge of being Ferrari boss, really. It's probably too early to say how that might go. I think that will sort of come a few races in. If there's a massive problem and he deals with it quite well, then obviously he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they can build on from a very good base of last
definitely.
season.
Yeah. It's not like they had a slow car. It was just some of the reliability and the strategy issues,
We have a very special Coylin also listening in on what's going on the track. What is going on?
Just to let you guys know, coming into the start of the first round of qualifying, Ted Kravitz asked Red Bull to clarify about the raised ride heights from during the practice sessions, and the team have come back and told them that they're operating on very similar levels to what they were doing with testing last week.
All right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so then we're no real reason why they might experience that shaking, really.
Yeah.
If that was sort of the main suggestion, but if they've come out and said no, then there must be something else about it.
Yeah, well, we'll see what's going on, won't we?
Yeah,
we'll see what's going on during this testing. More of you in the chat. Huraz says, Aston looks so good. It's a good sign for a good season, with lots of goods there. Just need Merck to do better. At least second place fight can be good. There's lots of goods. Cliff said, Mercedes, do you think that they're in trouble?
I think trouble's a bit of a stretch. I think they'll be slower, I'd imagine, than Ferrari and perhaps Aston Martin and Red Bull as well. But I said briefly during the preview that I've always sort of trusted Mercedes to be a team that develops very well. So while they might not be as quick in these early few races, I think come halfway through the season or maybe earlier, I think they'll sort of be on an even keel, really.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think with Mercedes, it's going to be about the car, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
How much they can improve on. I know they fixed it ish towards the end of last season, but how much they can improve that car, build on that car, because we know that they've got two very capable drivers. Yeah,
that's not a problem. I think they'll be happy this year that at least they don't have the pole positioning, so they have a base to build on really and sort of move forward as the season goes on.
Black Shadow Monkey says soft tyres also heat up quicker, so it gets optimal performance. The quickest of the three compounds. Takes much longer to heat up on hards and reach optimum performance. Arsenal are losing 1-0. That's always good news.
Good.
That's always good news.
I'm an Ipswich fan, so I'm fine. Like Arsenal can win, they can lose.
That is always good. That's something I like to hear. I want to quickly go back and talk about Red Bull in a little bit more depth. What do we think that is achievable for them? Because we know that they're always going to be challenging for the drivers. Again, they took home the constructors last year. That was a massive win for them. This season, do we think that they can take both and retain it?
I personally do, yeah. They look like, I think Verstappen's the strongest driver on the grid, and they look like they have the strongest car just going into the season. So, and Perez, we shouldn't discount. He's not a bad driver. He's a very good driver, and he'll be able to sort of add those points needed to win the constructors. So, yeah, I think the sky's the limit really for Red Bull this season. Yeah,
and you don't think anyone could challenge them maybe for the constructors, less so than the drivers?
It could be, yeah. I think it's hard. It's probably more hard to predict the constructors just because you sort of need two drivers who are both performing really well. I mean, Ferrari, Mercedes. I think I've backed Mercedes to finish P2 over Ferrari, but they could always do better. I mean, it's really about consistency throughout the season. That's something we saw a lot with Mercedes, and particularly Russell last year, that he managed to get all those P5s, even at a time when the Mercedes car wasn't great. So it's all about just adding race results together, and that sort of points mean prizes come the end of the year, really.
Let us have a look at practice 2 results. That was Alonso coming in top, Verstappen second, Perez third, Leclerc fourth, and Nico Hülkenberg in fifth.
I've just seen we've got a red flag. So that's I didn't mention that, but like a red flag, obviously that stops the session. So that means that someone on track's had an accident or crashed into a barrier. But basically, there's too much debris and too much stuff on the track. So the teams, as you can see, need to return into the garage and basically make sure everything's all right. As we've seen now on the TV, there's a part of the debris on the track. So that's what a red flag is. So that's not ideal for Q1. A lot of teams would be quite annoyed. I don't think a lot of teams even made it out onto the track yet before the running stops. So that's sort of not the ideal start for any team really to have that.
And we don't know who's
not
done
currently.
That,
no, I can see from the TV screen there's a bit of car on the track, but it's a small black object, so it's hard to identify which card that came off. But yeah, not a great start for whoever that is.
Yeah, not a great start. So let's talk through what's been going on so far in qualifying, shall we? Want to run through
Yeah, so we're very early into Q1, so like I said, not great to have a red flag now. But yeah, just a lot of teams be going out. You tend to see some of the slower teams go out first just so they can get a good lap time in. Maybe they need more time to warm up their tyres and stuff like that. But we didn't have a load of cars out on track. Like a lot of teams sort of wait longer into the session because more rubber gets put onto the track and then cars will go quicker. So yeah, a red flag's not great, but obviously that stops the timer, so there's not like they're losing out on time. But yeah, for any team they'll have these plans and they've suddenly been ripped up really.
Okay, so then we basically, is it a case that we start again?
Yeah, so it just, restart, like they'll get this track cleared, whatever needs to be done. Pretty much it looked like a bit of debris, so it's not going to take long. That'll just be a marshal running out, picking it up, making sure there's nothing else that's going to harm other cars, and then, the session will start again.
Okay, we will keep an eye on that. Back to Haas and Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg coming back into sport, he had, how many years was it out? Was it 3?
He had a weird situation where he was out 2 years as a full-time driver, but he was also the Aston Martin, reserve driver. So he did actually race this time last year because Sebastian Vettel got COVID. So he stepped in then. But yeah, this is his first time back in full-time racing since his Renault days. And it's a big move for Haas, really, because obviously they had Schumacher, but I think they wanted someone with a bit more experience, someone who perhaps wasn't going to crash so often and cost them a lot of money. But it's sort of a reason to be hopeful for Haas this year because they've got 2 very good drivers, very experienced drivers. So I think they're hoping that really pulls the team further up the grid.
And what do we think of Magnussen? Because he kind of got off to a good start last season, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Magnussen, to be honest. I think he's done very well with the Haas team. We had that pole in Sao Paulo, and that was, obviously there was elements of luck involved, but he didn't get there on, it was a fair competition. That's how he got there. But I think he's a very good driver. He started off very well last year. I think you're always likely to see that with Haas. They're going to start strongly and then sort of the other teams around them are going to develop a lot more and that sort of pulls them down the grid. But yeah, he could start very strong this year. They look like they have a good car and crucially, they got a new title sponsor end of last year, which means they can now reach the budget cap or near enough around that mark, and that's a huge
They
factor.
had a few issues with the sponsorship,
I think Haas have
That's how Mazepin ended up in
so Haas have had a long history of going back to Rich Energy, which was this company that said they had a load of money, but maybe they didn't so. And then we had the Mazepin, so he was there, he was a pay driver, his dad sponsored the team, so his son was recruited. Similar to Stroll, but obviously Stroll owns the team, so it's a little bit different. And I think comparing Stroll and Mazepin's a bit harsh on Stroll. I think Stroll's at least shown he's got some ability. I think Mazepin never showed too much ability. But yeah, as soon as the sponsorship money stopped, they got rid of him because they wanted a better driver, and they went for Kevin Magnussen. Yeah,
and my only thing with them two is that I feel that they're both quite competitive.
Yeah,
and they're going to be competitive with each other.
Yeah, that's the great risk for any team principal is that you want 2 competitive drivers because they're obviously going to do well on track, but at the same time you don't want them crashing into each other, which is a problem that's happened at Haas before. We've had Roman Grosjean with Magnussen. They were sort of clashing a lot more than they needed to. So I think that's obviously the big ask for any team principal is to make sure your drivers don't crash into each other. That's probably job number 1.
Yeah, job number 1. Otherwise, we're going to get a great season on the next Drive from Gunther Steiner. Don't forget, guys, make sure you like and subscribe, please, as well. AW said, I don't have too much faith in Mercedes. They've lost so many of their best people to other teams.
Yeah, so they lost a lot to Red Bull early on, and I think Aston Martin have also been on a big recruitment drive. So yeah, that sort of happens when obviously these are all very competitive people, but if they've been in a team that wins and wins and wins, naturally a lot of people are going to want a new challenge, so maybe they'll move on to somewhere like Red Bull or somewhere like Aston Martin. So yeah, that's a fair point. And they also lost obviously James Vowles to Williams. He's gone on to be a team principal. So how much of a loss he'll be is
you can understand that, from a personal aspect, you might want to be
definitely. Yeah, that's natural career pressure. And there's been a lot of rumours that maybe he could eventually one day replace Toto Wolff at Mercedes whenever he decides to stop. So yeah, it's great for him to get this personal experience, and obviously it's great for Williams as well because they've got a man who's been in a winning organisation for all this time. And yeah, it's just, I can understand why a lot of people sort of want to move on to new challenges if you've been winning for year after year.
Okay. And Lewis Hamilton, there was a lot of questions. I know he's not going anywhere, he's committed to Mercedes, but there was questions that he could retire. Let's say they don't do well again, Mercedes this year. What do we think?
Yeah, it's an interesting point really, because going into the winter break, Toto Wolff said that a deal would be done over winter, and yet here we are in Bahrain, the first race of the season, there's still nothing's happened of that. He's got a year left on his contract. There was talk that he was waiting to see how good the car was before committing to anything, but he sort of denied that. So yeah, I think it's probably just he's probably the busiest driver on the grid, and maybe they haven't had the time to sit down yet and sort of run through it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he signs on for at least another season after this one.
Do you think it'll be a case that he wants to, I mean, how old is Lewis Hamilton now?
38 off the top of my mind.
Wow.
Yeah, somewhere 37, 38.
You know, I actually thought he was still really quite
Yeah,
young.
I think he's just been around so long that we sort of forget
That is
this.
mad.
Yeah,
I thought he was way younger than that. Okay, so we don't think he's going to go anywhere else other than Mercedes, realistically.
Oh, no, yeah. I think if he does stop, he'll retire. I can't imagine him going for any other team, really. I mean, obviously, there's that romantic link back to McLaren, but I don't think that's realistic. I think if he decides to stop, he'll stop and go pursue his other interests.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see him going back to McLaren. And I do want to actually talk about McLaren. But before we do, what's the update?
We've got 30 seconds till it restarts. It looked like it was a piece off the Ferrari, if I'm correct, because I saw some tape going on over the wheel. So yeah, we've got about 20 seconds or so till the session restarts, and a lot of the cars are already in the pit lane because they want to get out and make the most of.
So who's starting for us?
They'll all go out now. Yeah, so they're all fine. There wasn't like a major crash. So as we can sort of see, when there's a red light, the teams will just queue up, and this is really dependent on where they are on the grid. So the garage, the garages are designed, organised by the constructors. So Red Bull now. Red Bull, as they won last year's constructor, are nearest the entry. So when a driver comes in, he'll be first stop is Red Bull, and it goes all the way down to Williams at the end, which is why we saw the Williams at the front of the queue there, because they're able to turn out and get out straight away.
Okay.
So yeah, the cars are back on the grid, back on the track now. And yeah, it's just starting again. Really, it didn't look like it was too big an issue. I think it was the Ferrari. I'm not sure which of Ferraris it was, but yeah, they're back underway, and it's just sort of ready to go again.
Okay, so keep your eyes on what's going on, because the TV is behind me, so keep your eyes on that. McLaren, Lando Norris. I think he's a really talented driver. He, the other day in practice, he finished 9th with McLaren. They're looking to come back from quite a difficult pre-season and testing. What do you think the future is for Lando?
It's a good question. He's got a very long contract. I think it's till 2025 at the top of my head. But
can you break your contract?
You can, but it's very expensive. So if he does that, the team will have to come, whichever team wants to hire him, will have to come to some kind of agreement with McLaren about paying off this contract. And I think McLaren just aren't going to want to entertain that. So it's very unlikely he'll leave his contract during these years. As to what the future is, obviously he's a great driver. He's sort of in this bracket of Russell and Verstappen, these young, and Leclerc, who's these young drivers sort of seen as the next generation. But in comparison to those ones, he's not at a team who are giving a chance to win, really. Those other three are all the top three teams. They all sort of prove themselves as title contenders at least. But McLaren's sort of that level behind. And Norris, he's very much in this best of the rest category. I think he finished P7 last year more than any other driver, so that shows that he's talented and pushing the car to perhaps its limit. And I'm not overly confident going into this new season. The McLaren car hasn't looked great. Some of the comments coming out of the team have been quite pessimistic about what they can expect, and it's going to take a lot for, I mean, there's always a debate in F1 about how much the car plays an element and how much the driver plays an element. So
how much do you think it plays?
I think it's about 50-50. I think if the driver's great but the car's bad, they can sort of pull it up, and the other way around as well. If there's a great car and the driver's not so great, it'll sort of level out. But if the car's really not good, I don't think that Norris is going to be able to challenge for podiums as they once did back in like 2020.
Yeah, because they looked like they were doing so well back then. They kind of were a bit on the precipice, weren't they?
Yeah, there's been like a massive uptrend for McLaren for sure since Zak Brown came in around 2016. I might have got the exact year wrong, but they would definitely look like they're on the up and up. And then for whatever reason, 2021 they went back a lot, and then 2022, like we saw even more of us. I might have got the year wrong, but yeah, last year they were definitely much worse than we were expecting, and then there's not a lot of optimism they're going to fix that this year round for sure.
In terms of Lando, I could see him somewhere like Mercedes.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think if he was a free agent, he'd have a long queue of people. Potentially everyone on the grid would queue up to get Norris for sure. He's young. He's proved himself quick. He hasn't got that race win yet, but I don't think that's anything on his ability. He's just not had the right car. But yeah, I think even somewhere like Red Bull, they might take him if Perez is getting up there in the age and they're sort of looking towards the next generation. Yeah, Norris is the perfect shout, really.
Yeah, I think he'd be a great one to come in. Just having a little look at the chat. Tyres says, always good insight from Sam, confirming that Lewis Hamilton is also 38 as well.
Oh, good.
We are running a poll. We said, who will be fastest today? So far, we've got Verstappen with 46%, Alonso 29%, Hamilton 12%, and Leclerc 11%. And AW says, if I'm Lando, I'm leaving McLaren. They have their priorities completely mixed up. They're too focused on commercial deals and new advertising boards rather than the car.
That's fair, yeah. I think that has been one of Zak Brown's big goals, is to get more money into the team, which is obviously important.
I have to say, it is a brilliant place. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have been there.
Yeah, me too, yeah. It's like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think it was actually in Star Wars.
It's like in the middle of nowhere as well.
Yeah, it's the middle of working. I just seen that Verstappen's gone quickest. So what we're seeing now is drivers going for their first quick run, but then Alonso's just overtaken him. So maybe that early pace that we saw in practice is real. So drivers are now getting their first quick laps in. We've seen a lot of the tyres being beat. Alonso's currently top, but not by a huge amount. And Leclerc's going for a quick lap as well. Tsunoda's up in P4, which is surprising for an AlphaTauri. And then Stroll as well is in P3. So that, again, shows the Aston Martin car is very quick. It's not just the talent of Alonso as Ocon goes into P4.
Yeah, I mean, we're early stages, aren't we?
Yeah, this stage, they'll sort of just set.
And then Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, going top as well. So the quicker drivers sort of set a quick lap, and they might even return to the garage and say that's job done really. This first stage is a lot about that bottom 5, and they all sort of want to not be part of that. They want to get a quick lap in, make sure they're at least into Q2, and then that's something they can hold on to really as we see Sainz goes top. So yeah, a lot of changes there. I think the lead changed about 6 different times there.
Yeah, we still haven't seen Checo with a time yet. There he is.
Oh, into P6, so you're not overly quick from Perez. But
so how many more times can they effectively...
They can go as much as they want, but yeah, it's much about the tyres. So obviously, the more you go, you're going to rip your tyres to shred, and you don't have an unlimited amount of tyres, so you can't just keep going and going and going. So
from a Red Bull point of view, you wouldn't be happy with a...
No, so yeah, this bit is mainly just about not finishing in the bottom 5. Like, as long as they're in that's fine, because you get another go in Q2, and then you get another go in Q3 if you make it. So this bit is really about setting one quick lap. You're not going to go hell for leather, because you might crash and you're out of qualifying then. So this is sort of, let's get in a good lap, but a safe-ish lap. We'll see these times come down a lot more. And then come back. Yeah, as the hour goes on, we'll see these times come down a lot more.
Interesting. I mean, currently it is Sainz that is at the top.
Yeah, so that's encouraging for Ferrari, for sure, yeah.
Definitely. Van Ash says, I need Ferrari and McLaren to qualify first or second. Well, we're not so sure that McLaren can do that.
No, they're currently in the elimination zone. I don't know if they set... Yeah, they look like they've set a quick lap, so that's obviously a worrying time for them so far. Norris in P17, Piastri P18, so that's not something they're going to be happy with for the moment.
Yeah, let's actually have a quick chat about Piastri, because highly rated. There was a lot of stuff going off, as we spoke about on the preview, with Piastri coming over from Alpine. Is there a lot of expectation now for Piastri?
It's a difficult one, really, because he's one of 3 rookies, but he's won F3 and F2 in consecutive years, which is something only done by Russell and Leclerc before. But at the same time, you've got this McLaren car that no one knows how good it is. I think it's not a free hit for him, because obviously there's expectations. They wouldn't have paid all that money to get rid of Ricciardo if they didn't want Piastri to come in. But at the same time, like, they're not expecting him to win World Championships or get wins, really. They just want some kind of improvement, and I think the first half of the year would be sort of a free hit to really move on.
And see what's going on. We've got some track updates from Cole.
Yeah, so after them first opening runs, Lance Stroll was P8, but he's after having his time deleted for track limits at turn 8.
Okay. So that's why we see Stroll right down there at the
bottom. So what that means is you have to keep your car, at least some part of it, inside the white line. So if the wheel crosses over, the FIA and the race stewards look at it and just delete that time. So yeah, that's what he's done. He's gone slightly too far on turn 8, and then they've deleted his time, and he has to go again.
So how does that impact them then?
So as we can see now, Stroll's got no time. So what that means is your quickest lap. So in the case of Stroll, that was the only quick lap he did.
We're seeing that replay now.
Yeah. So it's, in a minute we'll see presumably his right tyre slightly go over. You cross this white line, and that was something the FIA were a lot more strict. Yeah, we saw that.
See that, right?
The FIA were a lot more strict last year about not allowing drivers to go all the way off the track. So they basically get their lap deleted. They'll have to go for another run, especially if, like, Stroll, because he's now gone down to P20 because he hasn't set a time. So he'll go back out in a minute. A lot of the teams will aim towards the end of the session because that's when the track's at the best. There's been more rubber put down, and yeah, we'll see Stroll go out definitely, because he's not going to accept leaving in Q1.
No, okay, but at the moment it's not too detrimental to Aston Martin.
No, yeah, that's nothing terminal. That's just him going slightly wide and then having his time deleted. But yeah, he'll easily be able to set. If we look at Alonso currently in P4, obviously the Aston Martin car's got pace in it, so you'd expect Stroll to at least finish in the top 15 and make it through to Q2.
Okay, so has everyone kind of come off now?
So yeah, you're in this weird limbo stage where everyone's sort of done a run and they've gone back into the garage just to either put more fuel in or maybe change the tyres if they want to. But we should say that even when the clock strikes 0, that doesn't necessarily mean qualifying's over. That just means that no driver can start a new lap. So say if a driver crosses the line before it hits 0, that lap they're on will still count. So even when it hits 0, that won't be the final leaderboard. That's something that's more important in Q3, but you get a lot of last-minute drama, as it were, where we're sort of waiting for the drivers to cross the line and see where they finish. So yeah, we've got this time now where they're all, as we can see, just all in the garage, getting back the data, what they learned. Maybe their engineers are in their ear saying, okay, you're a bit slow in this corner, you could improve by doing this. And yeah, it's just sort of a calm before the storm, really, before they go out again.
Okay, Williams, seeing a lot of them at the moment. They've got a new driver as well, haven't
yes,
they?
they do. Yeah, he's done one of the rookie. Logan Sargent, he's not quite got the junior career that Oscar Piastri has. In fact, I think he finished P4 in F2 last year. So he's, again, one for the future. But much in the same way with McLaren, there's not a huge amount of expectation on Williams. So they're not expecting to get points. I mean, you would be surprised if he managed to get out of Q1, especially in his first qualifying session. Albon might be able to do it. He's obviously a much more experienced driver, but there's not a huge amount of Williams, unfortunately, just because where they are in the table, really. They finished last year. There hasn't been a huge amount. I know personally I've backed them for P9, but I think I'm the only person on the planet who's done that. So, yeah.
Which is interesting, because anyone who knows how it works, I mean, there's only 10. So
yeah.
We're only saying they're not going to be
exactly.
the worst of the worst.
Yeah, that's the fact that I'm saying they might finish P9, and that's seen as quite a big shout, says how low down the pecking order they are, because you were saying I think they won't finish last, and that's wow.
Yeah.
So they've been, historically they're a very good team, they're one of the most decorated teams, but it's just been a few years of maybe not investing as much as other teams.
They had some things with their owners, didn't they?
Yeah, so they were owned by the Williams family for ages, since the team began, but then I think 2016, 2017 they got bought out, and I think Claire Williams used to be the team principal, and she stepped aside, and since then it's sort of...
She was the only woman on the grid.
Yes, she was, yeah. It's a rare woman presence on the grid. But yeah, she's stepped aside as the Williams family left. So it's still got the Williams name, but it's got different owners behind it. And no one's entirely sure what their goals are. Obviously, it's good to get your brand in F1, but there's just a level of difference in terms of money spent of the various teams. If we think about Aston Martin, for example, who have put so much money into...
Well, they've been everything. They've been Racing Point.
Yeah, and now they've got this huge base they're building, and it's just levels of money you need to spend. I mean, F1 may be the most expensive sport on the planet.
It probably is the most expensive sport.
Yeah, if you think how much a crash might cost you, that's several £1 million just gone down the drain.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And who is funding that at the same time?
I mean, the teams get a lot, and then they'll get investors and things like that. So yeah, even when we say that Williams aren't spending a huge amount, they're still spending a huge amount of money in real life. Like, if you had their budget, you'd be in the Caribbean somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere lovely, living offshore. Saye says says hopefully McLaren will get a good finish sometime in the middle. There's a few McLaren fans going on in the chat. Mid-South says let's go Aston Martin. We spoke about McLaren already, and we have touched on Williams. You quite like Albon, don't you?
Yeah, I think he's a very good driver. I think he obviously had this time at Red Bull, and it didn't go quite as well, but I think we've seen that seat next to Verstappen is very hard to fill. I mean, Gasly was another driver who was in that spot and couldn't quite cut it, and moved to a different team, done very well. I think it was good for Albon to maybe spend a year out, sort of refocus, because there's a lot of pressure being in these top teams. I think we sometimes take that for granted.
Well, you can also lose your seat in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's mad. It's not like football where you contract to a club, you can easily just be gone, really. They can buy you out and you're gone. But he's been doing very well. He did very well in his last season with Williams, which was his first with his team. And I think, yeah, if there's someone that's going to score points in the Williams team, I think it's going to be Albon for sure.
I think it potentially helps when you're at a team that doesn't have that expectation.
Oh yeah,
it's
definitely.
easier to shine more and do better, I guess.
If we say, for example, if Albon gets P10 for Williams, that's seen as a great result. But obviously, if he got that for Red Bull, it's a disaster. So there's just levels of expectation. You can sort of live outside the limelight. You're not having daily articles or daily stories written about you. Yeah, and I think there's just a different challenge to being the teammate of Verstappen, because obviously he's such a talented driver that he's going to make his teammate look bad naturally. I think we sort of seen that with Sergio Perez a bit, that everyone sort of dismissed his talents, but I've just seen that Albon's gone P7, which is obviously very quick for Williams. Yeah, so that's very encouraging. I mean, as we're ticking down about 8 seconds till, like I said, the clock will strike 0, but we will see a few more laps come in after this. So we're seeing now a lot of the teams dash to get over the line and start a new lap, and I think Norris is coming in now, so we're going to see if he manages to get out.
Has anyone not come out?
No, so everyone's out now.
Everyone's
Yeah,
out.
so we saw the De Vries is finished. That means he's the driver at the risk, so he's at 15 at the moment. So if someone else in the bottom 5 finishes above him, he'll get knocked out. So which is obviously not a great start. And as I said,
There
that's
you go.
happened. So Norris has managed to move up and into the top 15 spaces. So he'll be going through to Q2, hopefully, if that's the way things stay as they are. And Gasly is another driver now. He's at risk.
Gasly's
That could
hanging
be.
around. The Ocon's up though. Ocon's
Yeah,
up to
that
11th.
could be very bad start for Gasly if he finishes outside Q2 in this first race of the team. But yeah, it's going to be a big lap for Piastri to see if he can sort of make it out there. I mean, he won't want to finish outside the top, but unfortunately he has. As I say that, he's finished P17, so he's out. So that's not a great start to his McLaren or F1 career. And then Hulkenberg
look
at
at
P6.
Norris.
That's a great move for Hulkenberg.
Yeah,
Gasly's been knocked out.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yes, that's an unbelievable result for the.
Okay, so just let everyone know what's going on now. So we're at the end pretty much.
Yeah,
aren't
we've
we,
had
of
Q1, so like we're starting to see the final laps come in, and then Sargent's not able to improve, so he's going out as well. So I think that means we've had all 3 rookies are going out in the first round. So that shows perhaps how hard F1 is compared to some of the other series. But yeah, so we're just getting the last few laps of Q1. I think everyone's done now by the looks of it. So yeah, that'll be our bottom 5. So we got Sargent, Piastri, and De Vries, who I mentioned, but obviously Gasly going out is quite the shock considering his teammates up in 12th, and Magnussen going out as well. That's not a great result for him considering again that Hulkenberg's up in 6th. So yeah, there's a few surprises in that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll look ahead for Q2. But AlphaTauri, you said that you think they're going to be finishing bottom of the grid this year.
Yeah, I seem to be proved right because one of the drivers is P20 currently.
Yeah,
but yeah,
De
I just
Vries.
think they had such a disastrous year. I mean, they were similar to McLaren. They were on the up and up. And then last year, their car just was way off pace. They had a lot of problems with it, which, if considering that Red Bull's car was so quick and the sister team, that you would think they'd sort of do well in tandem, but that just didn't pan out. They had real problems with it. And then sort of halfway through the year, they not gave up, but they focused on next year more. So yeah, like I can't imagine it's going to be a great year for them. I think they haven't got great drivers. I think Yuki Tsunoda's been in the sport for 2 years, but he was never the experienced one. And they've got De Vries, who's obviously, he's 28 years old, but he is a rookie. He's only raced once before. So of all the driver pair-ups on the grid, I personally think that's probably the weakest. And I think that's only going to tell with a car that's not been that great over last year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see that battle between who's going to finish really at the bottom as well.
Yeah.
And in terms of Tsunoda, I mean, no one really seems to be on board with Tsunoda. Is it just the attitude type of thing? I don't think he means to be that way.
No,
though.
yeah, I think, I don't know really. He was obviously a very sweary young man when he first joined the sport, which is fair enough. I think, obviously, if English isn't your first language, you tend to learn the swear words first. That's just the way it happens. But yeah, there's sort of still some question marks, just how good he is really. I think Gasly proved himself a much better driver last year, and he's going into his 3rd season now, and that's going to be really a pivotal one for him for sure, like to make sure, because there's every chance that if he doesn't do well this year, especially if De Vries beats him over the course of the year, I think that could be the end of Yuki in F1 for sure. But I personally think that Tsunoda will get more points than De Vries, but I don't think there'll be a huge amount in it. Like I said, I don't think AlphaTauri are going to score a load of points, so I think Tsunoda will do a bit better because he's had that experience with the car, but it's not looking positive, no.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Alfa Romeo, I mean, they're one that literally no one ever talks about.
Yeah,
Why
they've
is
got to go
that?
under the radar. They've
got Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, they've got the coolest guy on the grid, the Australian man, the Finnish/Australian man, Valtteri Bottas. It's a good question why no one talks about them, really. They're sort of in that bracket where they're not perhaps challenging for P4, but they're also not bad enough that at the bottom they sort of exist in their own ecosystem, really. I know their goals would be to aim for P4, but I don't know how realistic that is. I think Alpine look the strongest personally, but yeah, it's in the future it's going to be a really exciting time for them. So this is the final year of them being Alfa Romeo. They're the people that own them are Team Sauber, and they've owned them for ages, but they'll occasionally have these sponsors come in like Alfa Romeo. But this is the final year that's happening. From next year they'll go back to Sauber, and then 2026 is when they link up with Audi. So obviously that's a huge project on its way, and I think we're again in this sort of lull where they're not waiting for that to happen, but they're just very aware that it's happening in the future. But I think Bottas is a great driver. He showed early on last year that I think he beat Hamilton this time last year, which is remarkable considering what car he's in. But yeah, they do seem to be the least talked about team. I don't really know what the reason. Maybe because there's no real drama in there. There's no real.
It's just very calm.
Yeah,
no one talks about it. Like Joe Guanyu, like decent
Yeah,
driver,
yeah, I
decent
think
team.
that's the thing. The drivers aren't at each other's throat. They're quite good mates by the looks of it, and they just sort of get the job done.
It's like
really,
they're just going for a drive. Like there is, I don't feel there's like much competitiveness there.
No, maybe not. They might say different. I guess you can't be an F1 driver if you're not at least competitive. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know what their goals are really. I think they're sort of trying to do as best they can and then wait for that big Audi move, because I think that's when they'll start looking further up the grid for sure. Yeah,
and then when that Audi move comes in, like what can we expect to then see? Like to explain to people how people. Well, when a team gets taken over, like we've seen it with Renault as well. I mean, I know effectively they're still kind of the same. They've just rebranded.
So it's hard to know really. Obviously, Audi aren't going to come in if they're not expecting to challenge further up. I think the main thing that's happening on that front is that they're going to have their own engines. So at the moment, Alfa Romeo are supplied for Ferrari, but from 2026, Audi are going to produce their own engines and sort of put them in their car. So they're going to come into the sport. I mean, there's reasons why you come into the sport. Obviously, the way Formula One is now, there's a huge amount of exposure, a lot of eyes on it, so they're going to want their brand in the sport. But at the same time, they're not going to want in and then become one of the team at the back of the grid, because that sort of looks bad on your brand, obviously. So they'll have ambitions to move further up the table. I think the interesting part will be what the driver lineup will be, because there's been a lot of talk that as they're a German company, they might try and get Mick Schumacher in the car, but you'd be silly to get rid of Bottas for sure. So whether that means that Joe Guanyu's days are numbered, who knows really. I think apparently there's no collaboration at the moment. There's no they're not having Audi pick the drivers currently, but I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the most part that excites me, is what sort of drivers they're going to go for. But yeah, like I said, it's still 3 years away, which seems mad.
There's a lot that can change.
Yeah, it seems like it's on the horizon, but it's still 3 seasons worth of racing as well.
But also for the fact that Bottas must be fairly old now.
I mean, he seems like he's living a new life, but he is in his 30s. I think, I'm not going to guess, but I think 33 around that mark. I could be doing him a disservice, but yeah, he's not a young lad. So by the time that Audi comes in, he'll definitely be up there. I mean, it's whether he wants to do it as well, because obviously we saw Vettel, he retired very early, and I think, as most people know, that Bottas is mad into his cycling, so he might want to just go off and cycle through Australia with his girlfriend. Like, that might be his choice. But yeah, that's 3 years away. I think I'd sort of put him around Norris, that best of the rest level. It's just whether he can really make that step forward. Yeah,
I mean, you get such longevity, I guess, with F1.
Yeah.
That you usually think to yourself, like, oh God, you're getting to the end of your career at like 35, 36. But actually, you're not. You can still keep going.
Alonso's the example. Yeah, if you can race when you're 41 as you're Alonso, then any other driver can match that.
And you've still got the hunger for it. Absolutely. We were talking about Lando. I want to talk about George Russell, another young driver that I think he's really brilliant, to be honest. He finished within a second of Alonso's P1 time and yesterday. What's the realistic expectation for George?
Good question. He obviously exceeded expectations last year because he beat Hamilton over the course of the season, which is something that no one really anticipated going up to Mercedes. I think just more of the same, really. He'll want to aim for the championship. I think his best strength is his consistency. So the fact he was finishing in the top 5, even when the Mercedes car wasn't great, was just such a demonstration of how good his skill is. I think he was helped by coming from Williams, which obviously they didn't have a great car, so he had that experience of not having a great car and be able to use it for your benefit, which is perhaps why he was so much better early on in the season than Hamilton was. I don't know what a realistic expectation is. I think he'll want to fight for the title, whether that's realistic. There's only one champion, really, isn't there? There's a lot of good drivers on the grid, so we'll find out in these early races just sort of what level he's at. And if the car's not performing well, then yeah, he's going to have to really put in that extra amount of effort really to bump them up the grid.
I think that there's a lot of longevity in terms of George Russell being at Mercedes. I mean,
yeah.
And I think he seems like a relatively quite nice guy.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I think F1's quite lucky with that. I think all the drivers seem like relatively nice people. But yeah, Russell's sort of the next generation. I think it's great they've got owner of Hamilton, because Hamilton can not teach him, but sort of just say, like, it's great someone to learn off is someone like Hamilton. There's probably no better person to learn off than Hamilton. But yeah, Russell's very much the one for the future. He's sort of in that same age. I think he's 24, 25 as sort of Verstappen and Leclerc. I mentioned it with Norris that you've got this next wave of drivers coming in. He's definitely amongst that. So I think he'll have ambitions for the title in his career for sure. So yeah, I mean, just another good year. Hopefully less problems for him last year than there were last year. And then yeah, it's just a good year, I'd imagine, for Russell.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how his season goes. We haven't spoken much about Carlos Sainz and Leclerc. Sainz in particular, yesterday, he actually finished, I think it was 14th, I think yesterday, in that practice. He couldn't get the most out of the soft tyre runs. I think that Carlos Sainz personally is a great driver. I think that they make a really formidable partnership, both him and Leclerc. But would you say you think Leclerc's more the one to watch?
Personally, yeah. I think if a Ferrari driver is going to win you the title, it's going to be Leclerc. I think there's been a bit of an issue at Ferrari over the last few years of, do they favour Leclerc? Do they put all their eggs in the Leclerc basket? Or do they continue having both drivers? Because it works well, but at the same time, Leclerc might not like that if he's not. I think, obviously, it doesn't help Leclerc's case that Verstappen is quite clearly the number one driver. So if needed, Perez will get out of the way, whereas Sainz probably won't do that. So if you're in the title run, that's not going to help if your own teammate's blocking you. But I think Sainz is a very good driver. I think what I just said probably sounds quite mean towards him, but I just think Leclerc is maybe in that Verstappen, Hamilton level of just a cut above the rest, really, yeah. As we see, I think, yeah, Q2's begun now, so we've seen the Ferrari drivers just come out to the track now for their warm-up lap, and then they'll get a quick lap in.
So in terms of tyres, what are we on now?
So yeah, this will be softs again.
Still soft.
Yeah, so yeah, probably a new set of softs. But yeah, we'll only really see softs now. I mean, you might do a quick medium run to begin with, but I think that time's really passed, and it's definitely onto the softs now. This is sort of when it starts getting a bit more serious, because while teams like Red Bull and Ferrari should easily make it into Q3, sorry, that's not a given, so they can't take their foot off the pedal, very literally. So yeah, this is sort of when we get an idea of who's quit, and we'll sort of see the less strong teams, so the midfield teams maybe drop out now, and then the ones towards the lower grid. So expect Alex Albon, things like that, they'll probably go out this session if I'm not being too unkind. This is sort of when you get to the top 10 and like really means business for sure.
Yeah, well, we're just having a look at Lance Stroll in the Aston right there. I mean, he seems to have recovered from his cycling accident.
We had there was an interesting moment yesterday when they were telling him to, I think he go a bit harder into one corner. He said, well, it's hard on my wrist. So obviously he's still got some pain. I mean, if you had a broken wrist and you're suddenly, there's probably not a worse sport to be in than F1, doing all the actions.
I'm very surprised that he managed to make it back in time.
Yeah, I think he's got some plates fitted into his hand, so like how much that's affecting his driving. Obviously they're confident he can drive well, else they would have put one of their reserves in, but yeah, it just seemed like a very quick turnaround. But I think the real test of that will be tomorrow. Like when you're 2 hours into a race, like there's no break, there's no stop. Like that's probably when we're going to see if it really is affecting him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be interesting to see what Lance Stroll can do. But I'm very intrigued about this kind of battle between the two of them. That's where my eyes are kind of going to be going this season. I don't think they're going to be battling necessarily each other, but I just think if they're going to get anywhere in the Constructors and Challenge, I personally just don't feel that maybe Stroll is anywhere near the level of Alonso.
I think, yeah, that's a common feeling really. It's a weird situation for Alonso where your teammate is your boss's son, so you've got to be a bit careful about how hard you race him. I think Alonso had that issue with him in the US race last year where they both came together. Alonso was like flying off the track but somehow managed to finish. So yeah, like you said, if you want to finish up in the Constructors, you're going to need two drivers that are consistently doing it well. I think it's hard to know how good Stroll is. He's never really had the pressure of having to fight for his seat just for virtue of who he is. But at the same time, I think he perhaps gets a little bit harsh done by being called a pay driver compared to some of the other ones. I mentioned Mazepin earlier. He was probably the worst example of a driver who's not as good as the money behind him. But yeah, I think Stroll's got some talent. As I said, he's gone P1, so obviously there's still a long way to go in this session, but that's a good start for him. Yeah,
that is definitely. We see Hülkenberg up there now as well.
Yeah, so getting a lot of surprising teams, the Hülkenberg, and then Joe's gone P2 as well, so Alfa Romeo looking very strong. Bottas goes into P2 as well, so yeah, definitely those teams are looking strong for sure.
I'm loving the angle where you feel you're literally in the car.
Yeah, the helmet cam. I think this is the first year where all 20 drivers have got them, so you'll be seeing a lot more as the season goes on.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm just unsure. I'm just waiting to see what's going to go on with Ferrari here.
Yeah, so they've just rounded the last corner, and Hamilton and Russell have gone top. So now Leclerc will see if he can beat that.
I'm interested to see how close we're going to be running.
Yeah, oh, there you go, into P4, so not great. And then Verstappen's looking very quick. He's got two purple sectors. So For those that are newer, like the purple sectors means that he's the quickest on the track. So the green means they've improved their personal time, and then the purple means they're the quickest driver on the grid. So if you see a driver, that was expected. That if you get 2 purple sectors, you're probably going to be top in the timesheets come the end of the lap. So yeah, Perez goes into P2 as well. So Red Bull's on top. That's very interesting. You've got both Red Bulls and they're both Mercedes after them. So that was not a great run out for Ferrari, really. If we're looking at objectively, 6th and 7th isn't where a lot of people thought they'd go for, but. We should say again that there's a lot of time. There's 7 minutes 19 as I look at the clock left in this session, so it's certainly not terminal. Like they'll go back to the garage, they'll perhaps get some more fuel in the car, maybe change the tyres, and they'll go back again, and that's sort of when we'll see.
So we think they'll have another round?
Yeah, they'll definitely, they'll go into the pits now, sort of have a little break, then they'll go out again, sort of very close to the end of the time. That tends to be the way it goes, because as I mentioned, they're all looking for that rubber on the track. So obviously, as these tyres degrade, they leave rubber on the track, and that just makes it quicker. That gives you more grip as the other cars drive over it.
Just having a look at where Ferrari are, 6th and 7th currently, I mean, that can change. But something that we spoke about that happened in testing was the mention of tyre degradation. So is this something that potentially is going to be causing a problem?
It shouldn't be too much of an issue in qualifying, just because it's very few laps. So they'd have a real problem, I'd imagine, if tyres are degrading that quickly, that it's sort of affecting their time. I don't really know the cause behind why they're a bit slower than perhaps we expected, but yeah, I think they might have more issues, and that's something we definitely saw last year. They had a very quick qualifying car, and then sort of come the race, they found themselves a lot slower, a lot behind Red Bull, and that was probably a lot to do with the tyres.
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen absolutely flying on that lap. Probably looking a bit worrying for anybody else.
Yes, I mean, other than his teammate, he's almost 0.4 seconds ahead of them. So yeah, that's a big gap. It doesn't sound like it, but it is a big gap in the world of F1.
It is a big gap. What can they do to close that from a Mercedes point of view?
Yeah, I mean, that's not something that's going to happen instantly. I think that might not. If Red Bull have this, I mean, obviously we're talking about one track in isolation. Like that's not, if one team's quick on this track, that's not going to be the case throughout the year. Like we've got 23 races this season, and every circuit has different challenges. Some have different characteristics, so that's something that's going to have a massive impact as we go on in the year. But yeah, for now it looks like Red Bull definitely have the quickest car, but that could all change in the next 20 minutes or so. Yeah, it's sort of the exciting time of the first qualifying of the season. We're sort of getting a real understanding of where these teams are. Yeah,
it's exciting because you can't, like you said the other day, you can only take
you can take testing with a pinch of salt, and now this is the real deal. This is stuff they won't be hiding anything anymore. They're going for it, and we're seeing as I look at Albon just putting his first quick lap in, we're seeing the teams give their all, and that's given us more real reflection of where they might be on the track.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what Alex Albon can do here in the Williams.
Yeah, I mean, for Albon, this is probably pretty much job done already. Like, there's probably not a lot of expectations if he can get Q3. It'd be great if he does. It'd be an incredible achievement, but that Williams car isn't expected to challenge. So it's sort of, I'm not going to say a free hit, but like, there's not a load of pressure on him now. I think looking at the lineup, I think Norris is probably looking over his shoulder. And if we look at Stroll as well, he's in P12, considering his teammate is in P5. That's not a great result for him. But
I think it's going to highlight the difference even more.
Yeah, I mean,
the levels of quality.
Yeah, last year him and Vettel were quite far apart. Vettel definitely showed his strength throughout the course of the season. But yeah, I think if Alonso's regularly getting to Q3 and Stroll's not, then that does look bad. I mean, there's one person every driver doesn't want to beat at the weekend, and that's their teammate. So yeah, if that consistently happens, then maybe Lawrence Stroll might have to have a look at sacking his own son, which seems like an awkward Christmas conversation.
I have to see. There is a replay going on at the moment.
Right, so yeah, Albon's just run wide, so he'll get rid of that lap. If he was going for a quick lap, he'll stop now, and he'll go to a much slower speed and then maybe try again, or maybe go into the pit. So yeah, he's just run wide on one of the corners, and obviously, as we saw in Q1, that deletes your track time, so there's no point in.
So he'll get to have another go at that.
Yeah, so yeah, he's got plenty of time. It's not like he had seconds remaining. He went quite a long way wide there, to be fair. So
yeah, I mean, he was literally.
I'm being very kind. Over. Yeah, that's not close, that one. So yeah, I don't know why the reason was that, but yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll expect to see them go back out shortly, I
guess.
So
so yeah, give it maybe a few more minutes. So the trick is you want to get a full lap in, but enough time to get over the line before it hits 0. So if we think a quick lap, Verstappen's in the quickest lap at 1:30, you're not going to do that on a warm-up lap. You're going to be a bit slower. So yeah, you're going to have to make sure they send it out in plenty of time. As we can see, many of the engineers on the tyre blankets getting ready now, so I expect any second now we'll get the drivers coming out. And as I say that, Lewis Hamilton's go.
Here they go.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on that. Just to run through Verstappen, he was at the top. He was on 1.30.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, Perez, he couldn't beat him. He was only on that lap, 0.243 seconds behind. Ferrari both set their laps on used tyres. They're 6th and 7th. Let's see if they can change that. We've got some updates from the grid.
Okay, so just to point out there, you might have seen Lance Stroll being wheeled down the pit lane. It's been reported that he missed the weighbridge coming into the pit lane. And just to kind of point out how much these cars have been developed in the last year, we see on Verstappen's first time in Q2, it was a 130.503. That is already 500th of a second faster than Leclerc's pole time last year.
Wow, okay. So yeah, that just shows how much development's come on. And then if we go back to Stroll, so the FIA will randomly, it's a bit like when you go to an airport, they'll randomly select people saying we want to look for your bags. It's sort of similar for cars. They'll randomly pick cars to make sure they're not underweight. So every car has a weight they have to reach, and if they're under that, you get a penalty. So that's what we're seeing there, is that teams are just randomly selected to say, okay, we want to look at your car now. You go on this weighing scale, you get measured, and then you carry on. But it sounds like Stroll either didn't know he was supposed to do that, or he forgot, drove by it, had to stop, and then his drivers, because you're not allowed to reverse in the pit lane, his mechanics, have to pick him up and then push him back onto it, and then he'll carry on. So yeah, that's sort of just why we saw that delay.
Okay, and I wanted to just, for anyone who obviously doesn't know why cars go wide or something like that, what causes that? Is that the driver or more so the car?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard really. There's a lot of different reasons. I think for some of the windier tracks, it can definitely be to do with wind, if a wind hits you as you go into the corner. But yeah, it's a lot to do with the car. Like the ones up the further the grid would just stay on the track a lot more. But obviously compared to a road car, these cars are incredibly grippy. They'll go around corners with ease. But even then, the speed they're going, like a little mistake, you're going off quite a long way. So yeah, Albon went off for whatever reason there. I mean, maybe it was the car, maybe it was an error, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons that go into why you might run wide. And obviously, you're really pushing for the maximum. Like if they were trying to, they could easily get the car to stay in the track as much as they want, but they're really going for the top speed, and that means slinging it around corners, and occasionally that will go wrong and you might go wide.
Okay, and Albon, still no time on that, we're waiting for him?
Yeah, so he'll be coming out, he seems to do the pits. I don't know if he's got a problem or if he's staying in there, so he doesn't like he's going to come back out and put in a time. So that suggests to me there's something wrong with the Williams, or they've just accepted that they're going to get P15. But yeah, he doesn't appear to be coming out. So as it's hit 0 now, that'll be his time if he is still in the pit. So yeah, Bottas has gone P10, and then
Hülkenberg up to 3rd.
Yeah, Hülkenberg's 3rd, so he's not able to improve on Red Bulls.
Wow, driver at risk, Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, so he's still doing his lap, so he should be alright. But I think if he's paying attention to Norris here, he should be an interesting finish if he finishes in P10. As he comes around the final corner. Who's that? Yeah, we're looking at Norris now. He's coming around the final corner. He's got to beat that 131 of Joe to get in. Yeah, he does. He scrapes in, so that might not be enough to get him in. Let's see how the others do. Okay, so Leclerc goes top. Yeah, so Leclerc's top now. Stroll's putting in a quick lap, so he needs to get himself out of the bottom 5.
Sainz is up to 3rd.
Yeah, Sainz into P3 now. That's interesting. So if we see, the Red Bulls actually haven't come out. So they were confident that their time was quick enough that no one was going to, they could get beat, but they were confident they weren't going to get beat by enough drivers to knock them out. So they just stayed in the pit. They didn't feel the need to go out, really. So
is that a risky strategy, or?
I think for that sort of speed, they could have been confident. As we see, Norris got knocked out there. So Stroll just picked in to P10, as we see a very happy Aston Martin garage, and his mum. So she's
happy.
Yeah. So yeah, they've pipped into P10, but that does mean that Norris is going out, as along with the Alphas, the AlphaTauri and Alex Albon in last. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Leclerc's only just a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so yeah, that's obviously positive that he's gone P1, but we've got to realise that the Red Bull stayed in the pit, so they were obviously very confident they were going to get beaten enough. Saying that though, Perez did get down to P7, but even he wasn't really at risk of going out. So that was just why they chose to stay in the garage and come back out.
Yeah, interesting to see what happens in Q3, isn't it? But
yeah, so this is sort of the Q3 is the exciting part now. not got rid of the deadwood, but we've got rid of some of the ones that won't be challenging for wins. And as we can see, I think the biggest shock on there is obviously Hulkenberg that's made it through to P8. That's a great result for Haas. Like wherever, even
unbelievable.
Even if he finishes P10 now, that's an excellent start for him.
Yeah, they'll be in with the points, and that's the thing. They just want to be in with the points.
Yeah, so Ocon's in 9th as well, so that's a good start compared to his teammate for sure. Got both Aston Martins in there, got both Mercedes, both Red Bulls, and both Ferrari. So yeah, the top 3 teams are all in, and then we've got the other ones like Alpine and Aston Martin who will be challenged. But yeah, I think looking at that, that's definitely Hulkenberg is the impressive one so far. I mean, whatever happens now is a great day for him, especially if we consider he's been out of a car for so long. This is his first time driving in the Haas. So yeah, it's great start for him. Yeah,
guys in the chat, let us know what you think about that Q2 as we head into Q3. But Norris, he's out of that.
Yeah, I mean...
Bad day for McLaren.
Yeah, but I think, Piastri going out of Q1 and then Norris in Q2, that's not great for McLaren. That's probably what they expected, to be honest. There was a lot of pessimistic talk beforehand that they weren't going to challenge for Q10. I mean, Q3, sorry. It's just not a great start. I think that car's definitely got issues, but I think, what was it, P11 for Norris? I mean, maybe he'll be able to do something tomorrow. Maybe there'll be a mistake up front, or he can use his driving talent to get ahead and during the early corners. But yeah, I mean, that's probably the best they could have hoped for, judging by their pre-season performance.
With this track, I kind of want to look at Bahrain in a little bit more depth. What can we kind of expect from this track?
Yeah, so it's
what we've seen in the past as well.
It's sort of a good all-rounder, I'd guess. That's sort of why they do it testing there. It's not like incredibly different circuit. It's got some very tight corners, don't get me wrong, but it's got some good straights as well. So I think it's not a hugely challenging track. I mean, you've obviously got to pay in mind to the temperature. So this is a night race, obviously. So I think Bahrain about 3 hours ahead of us. So that's evening time race that we're having. But yeah, it's sort of a good tester, really. Like that's why testing's gone on there, and that's why tomorrow's race should be sort of not easy to predict for the teams, but it's not like a Monaco. It's not like somewhere that's going to provide too many challenges, as it were.
Yeah. Ferrari, they found some pace in that, didn't they, with the fresh tyres?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm interested to see what's going to happen, in Q3.
Yeah. Ferrari looked strong there. I mean, I think even though Red Bull didn't come out, the fact that Leclerc was able to beat Verstappen's time, which looked very quick. Yeah, it's just all very, very exciting, really. Like, you get to this part of the stage where...
This is where the fun happens.
Yeah, this is where it happens now. This is where the drivers... I mean, we were talking about how much the drivers can do. This is sort of the area where they'll prove themselves. I think anything can happen in a race, obviously, but this controlled environment of testing where every driver gets a pretty much a clear run down the track, or as clear as they'd hope to be, sort of shows the real talent, and that's sort of where the cream of the cream really come out and prove themselves. So yeah, we'll see in the next 10 or so minutes when it gets underway.
Yeah. Last season it was it Leclerc that finished
I believe
pole?
So, yeah. Leclerc got pole, I believe, and then he obviously went on to win the race, which wasn't something that always happened from a Leclerc pole. There's see quite an interesting graphic of who's quickest in the medium speed corners. It's Alonso. So that's another point that I think F1's a very good sport about data, obviously, so you get a lot of things like
analytics.
Yeah, so you can sort of analyse where you're quickest. So that's something that all the engineers will know. They'll have all this data as it's happening. And as well, they'll have a lot of not so much the data, but the team radios of other teams so they can listen in. So that's sort of why a lot of the teams are very secretive over the radio. They'll use codes and stuff like that because they don't want to say exactly what's wrong until they're back in the garage where they are.
What kind of codes? Let us in on some secrets.
There's obviously the famous Multi-21, which was during Red Bull, which is obviously an order that it's about Vettel and Red Bull not overtaking each other. But I got an interesting story. When I went to McLaren's base, it was Mercedes base. When I went to Mercedes base, like, we saw their bit where all the engineers back at the base. So for a race, they'll send a lot of staff, but they'll also keep a lot of staff back at their factory. So we're having a little tour, and we went to the place where they do all their strategy. And the tour guide at the time said that 1 year Renault, which is obviously Alpine before the rebrand, they accidentally left their radio on public, so all the other teams were hearing their really intricate detail.
Oh God!
And no one told them. So,
they just heard all the info.
Yeah, every team was listening, but all other 9 teams just kept stum and did not tell Renault that they're broadcasting all their major data around. But yeah, I think eventually someone at Renault twigged that why do all our opponents know what we're doing all the time? And it's because they had a big ear on their radio.
Yeah. Well, they won't want to do that again. Pierre Gasly gone out, obviously, in that kind of Q1 session.
Yeah.
He'll be very disappointed by that, won't he?
Not a great start for Pierre at all, really. I think I sort of predicted that Ocon was going to be the stronger of the two just because he's had more time in that car. But yeah, still, that's not a great time. You'd want at least a Q2, sorry, for Alpine if they're going to be challenged for P4. So a lot of work for him to do tomorrow. I think the good thing about qualifying is it's not terminal. Like, this isn't where you're going to end the race. You don't get any points in qualifying. It's all about Sunday. So like he has time to improve, and hopefully over the length of a race, that Alpine car will be quick and he can move up the grid if you're a Gasly fan.
Right, so here are the drivers that are going to be fighting it out for pole. Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, George Russell, Hamilton, Sainz, Alonso, Perez, Hülkenberg, Ocon and Stroll. Now, I'm going to ask you to give me your top three before this gets underway.
Three. I'm going to go Verstappen. It's a boring answer, but I think Verstappen looked the quickest. The fact that they didn't think he needed to go back out was very telling. I'm going to go Leclerc second. He looked very quick then. I'm going to be romantic. Let's say Alonso third. I don't know if it'll happen, but the hype is real. Let's get Alonso third.
The hype is really real. It really
Alonso
is real.
Train.
Guys in the chat, let us know who you think is going to be P1, P2, P3, and see what we can do in this next Q3 round. I'm very, very interested to see what's going to be happening here. But Mercedes, I mean, they are looking more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's another good session for them. Like, I don't think a lot of people are expecting that to be high up. As Q3's begun now, but a lot of the teams still in the garage. They're going to wait till we're going to see a lap to get used, lap to get out there, and then towards the end of the session is when they're going to send them out. So that's when the track is at its optimal. So
it's going to be the same again.
Yeah. So basically, one run out, set a time, come back in, and then that last final run is where teams really go for it, where the track's at its optimum. So it's got a lot of rubber down, and then they've got the right amount of fuel in the car. They've got the tyres on, so yeah. We'll see another run shortly, I suspect. But
and they're going to be sticking with the softs?
Yeah, so definitely softs now, yeah. You want the quickest, absolute quickest you can. As I think one of the commentators, said earlier on, it warms up a lot quicker, so it's ready to go, really. So, I mean, there's a big, if you ever watch the broadcast, you'll see there's these blankets on the cars, which is just warming the tyre up. And there's actually some debate about whether they're going to have them next year because they're trying to be a bit more sustainable. They're trying to get rid of some stuff like that because that's pumping out hot air onto the tyres, and obviously that's using a lot of energy for a sport that's aiming to be more sustainable.
It's quite difficult for this to be sustainable.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
That sense.
Yeah, so they've got to try and do everything
with
they can.
Fuel
really.
As well.
Yeah, but that's a big debate that's going to happen later on in the season about those tyre blankets. But yeah, we're seeing the Ferraris get out there now, so yeah, they'll be putting in a quick lap. They look like they're first out on the grid. Oh no, I can see another car up in the distance. So yeah, there's a few teams out there already begun, and then I think that's the Aston Martin behind the Ferraris.
Aston, behind them.
So yeah, they're going out, doing a warm-up lap, which is called the out lap, and then they'll put in a quick lap.
They'll get to it.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Q3 is underway. We mentioned that Verstappen, Perez, Red Bull, they didn't go out for that second lap. Could that be deemed as a little bit cocky or overconfident? But we know they are anyway.
Yeah. Perhaps if it wasn't Red Bull, but I think that's not overly cocky. I think they were just so confident. If there's no need to send your car out, then why bother really? Like you can just keep them in the garage, keep maybe tyres a bit fresher, and if you set at such a quick time as they did, you can be fairly confident you're not going to get knocked out. So yeah, I think it was a wise move.
What do you reckon their time will be?
Oh, it's a good question. I think that 1:30 looked very quick. I mean, probably break into the 1:29, something like that. Yeah, I can't imagine there's going to be a load in it between the pole sitter and the P2. I'd imagine they all look very, very close together. I mean, Verstappen might put in an amazing lap as we see him out on track now, but I think you'd be very close together, which is sort of what you want really as a fan. You don't want a team to go flying off of it from the first race. So if we see a very bunched up grid with a lot of close times, then that's going to be good for the season ahead. Yeah,
I mean, I just can't wait to see the race tomorrow. I'm so excited to see all of these cars finally getting put to the proper test. Yeah,
it feels like a long winter. It's been a long time since these cars actually racing. Yeah, and while qualifying's exciting, there's nothing that beats the actual race for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and also because you have testing last week, so it's like, oh, we're almost there,
and then it's like
before we even get to the race, we've still got to have practice, we've still got to have qualifying, so it's like we just want to get there already. So okay, we're looking at Verstappen now.
Yeah, he's going out on a quick lap, so yeah, he's got Perez behind him as well. So yeah, I don't think we've had the time with the Ferraris yet.
There he is.
So there, yeah. So just okay. So the Red Bulls were out first, so they'll set a lap first, and then we'll see the Ferrari Leclerc's behind both Red Bulls. So we've got about 50-50 split of drivers back in the grid. So the Mercedes have chosen to stay in, as has Alonso, and Hulkenberg's in there as well, and Ocon. But interestingly, it's the top 5 that have gone out. Of course, it's top 5, and they're the only ones out. But yeah, we've got a 50-50 split of which cars are out on track. So yeah, that's all about what teams think are best for when to go out, really.
Okay, it's getting very exciting in here. Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a purple sector for Verstappen. That means he's gone quickest in sector 1. So currently he'll be leading as we wait to see how the sector 2 pans out.
What's the green? What's the green?
So yeah, I'll explain it again. The purple means you're quickest of everyone on the grid, whereas the green means you've improved on your own personal time. Great. So yeah, and if you see a yellow, that means they've gone slower. So we're not really going to be seeing yellows now. So Verstappen's the quickest sector 2 as well. So yeah. So yeah, all the tracks on the grid, as we see, Leclerc's nicked it off him. So Leclerc's gone quickest in sector 2, but all the tracks on the calendar will have 3 sectors between them, and that's sort of how they do the times. Really.
Okay, so you called it. So there we go, Verstappen with that. That initial one. It's just dropped off. It was around about 1. Where's it gone? It was 1.
Yeah, it was around that mark.
Yeah.
So yeah, 129.897. So yeah, just under the 130s. As Leclerc hits 130 dead, that's quite an interesting time just to hit.
Literally, just bang on it. We're waiting for Perez.
So Perez has gone, he's P3, Sainz P4. So yeah, the 2 not deputy drivers, but the 2 co-drivers, I'd say, have sort of just behind that level. Stroll into P5. So I mean, it's hard to know what to expect from Stroll, really, as we see Alonso finally make his way out onto the grid. And yeah, the rest of the grid look like they're going. We've got Hulkenberg behind Alonso. I think all eyes on Alonso now. See what he can do for his first quick lap at least.
Yeah, and then we'll have one more to go.
Yes, one final lap. And that's
it's tight. I mean, what we're seeing so far, of course, the Mercedes are only just kind of
heading
ready
out,
to head out now. What do you make of the car?
I love it. I think I've always preferred the black livery. I think the silver arrow is obviously iconic for their name, but I massively prefer the black. And
I think prefer black?
Yeah, it's interesting this year because as I mentioned, there's a weight limit, and weirdly, you don't think it would do a lot of weight, but the paint that teams put on does add up. So a lot of teams have gone for this carbon fibre look, which is what we see on this black Mercedes, and that just means they can save some crucial grams on weight, really.
Carlos Sainz looking like he's had a haircut.
Yeah, no longer the shaggy top. Oh, he looks like a little bit of a snap there, so that just means that the car's got a little bit away from him. So he managed to stay in the grid, but yeah, he snapped back in and kept it in the track. But yeah, that's going to ruin your lap. That's not something you want to happen.
No.
You lose too much time on that.
So, I mean, still managed to stay P4.
Yeah. So yeah, he's done well to have not an accident, but like a little mistake like that. As we see, Alonso's going around for the first time. I think this is still his warm-up lap, so we'll see him start his quick lap in a minute and sort of get an idea of where he is. Verstappen's gone back into the pit, so he's obviously getting ready for his final lap, which will come shortly. Yeah. And yeah, Alonso, I think he's just going down the straight there, so we'll be starting his lap in a minute. We'll see those earlier drivers, they've all gone into the pit, so that top 5 have gone back in. So it's been pretty much a 50-50 split, well, exactly a 50-50 split of drivers going out. But Ocon is still in the pit, so I don't know if he's had an issue or something. But yeah, he looks like he's not come out yet, so I don't know what's going on with him there. They might just be saving him for one final lap, or he might have a problem. As we see, Alonso's started his quick lap, so he looks like he's got the run of the track. There's not going to be a lot of traffic for him, so he should be able to
let's make a guess.
Well,
hazard a guess
position?
for me. Yeah.
I'm going to go P3. There's a little bit of a gap between Leclerc and
You still
Perez.
think P3?
Yeah.
Okay. Provisional P3.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of a gap there. There's a 0.1 of a second, so he might squeeze in there. But yeah, he's looking very good. He's set a green, so that means he's improved on his own time for the first sector. But even this isn't quite the main event. This is sort of the last one before we see the real laps where they absolutely go for it. So yeah. But yeah, he's looking good so far. Like, he won a green. As we see, Hulkenberg's out there as well now.
What can they achieve?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, that Haas is like the fact they're already in Q3 is such a result for them that anything else is just the cherry on top, really.
I agree. Let's have a quick look at who's been in the chat. Higo says, Tailcoin, his brother says hi. He's listening to everything that's going on the track for us. He's being super helpful for us today. Toffee said, Spurs are playing at the same time. Abby would rather cover F1. That says a lot. I would much
Very
rather
wise
cover.
choice these days.
I'd much rather cover F1, especially. And T says, I love the black livery.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay, so Alonso's gone P4. That's one off, so he's just
You're
behind
one off,
Perez.
not two, but that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is good.
In an Aston as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like above Sainz as well, but obviously Sainz had the little mistakes. So. Hulkenberg into 6th. So
I'm really impressed. I mean, they must be buzzing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's such a result for them. As we see that Russell and Hamilton now setting their lap. So expect them.
But
to finish.
where can you see them slotting into? The Mercedes.
I wouldn't be surprised they'd just be. Yeah, I've been beaten to it, but I was just behind that Alonso.
Go on, call Hamilton.
Yeah, that's quite slow for Hamilton.
Yeah.
So P7 for Hamilton, which is the slowest time of anyone that's come out yet. So the bottom 3 haven't set a quick lap yet. So that's actually the slowest time, which is probably not great. As we see Charles Leclerc jump out of the car, so he'll have a little break before getting back in it in that last run.
Okay, this is going to be very interesting to see, but especially looking at what's happened with Mercedes. I mean, I know it's not final yet, but Russell finishing above Hamilton, Russell in 5th, Hamilton in 7th.
That's an interesting one. I mean, the fact that Hamilton finished below Sainz as well is quite surprising, considering Sainz had their little issue. I don't know if Hamilton had something similar, but obviously he'll want to improve on that, so he'll go back into the pits now, and then they'll so we can just see Stroll setting an out lap, so that means he's just his warm-up lap for the quick one. So he's in P8 at the moment. He's going to want to improve on that. And
also Ocon.
So Ocon has come out. I don't know why they chose not to send him out for that first one, but yeah, he's obviously the car's fine. They're sending him out now, so see what he can do. I mean, probably you'd be expecting to move past Hulkenberg, whether he can get past Stroll as well, but it might be a bit too much of an ask to try and break into that upper reach of the table, really.
Okay, let's wait and see what's going to happen with Mercedes. Where do you think that they're going to end up in that?
I think I'm going to go behind all the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. So are you
putting him behind? Are they putting him behind Alonso?
Yeah, mate. I'll stay with Alonso P3. I'll be confident. I'll say. I think I'll go Hamilton. What am I lost? So I think Russell will be P7. Yeah, that works out. That works P7, and then I think Hamilton behind him. P8.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Fernando Alonso can even if he can stay P4, if he can get P3, I mean, that is a brilliant result for Aston.
This was a team that was nowhere near this last year, so it's just a huge congratulations to the team back at the factory, I guess. They've built an incredible car, they've got some great people, someone that used to work at Red Bull's gone over to work there, so they've obviously, it's really showing, even in this first race. I mean, they themselves are trying to lower expectations, but I think the fact that Alonso is getting P4, and crucially the fact that Stroll's also there, so it shows that it's not just Alonso. Okay, so we're seeing Verstappen on his quick lap now. We've got just around 10 seconds of Q3 to go, and then so Verstappen's out on his quick lap, so this is what he's going to hope is good enough for pole, but he's slower than he was on the first lap, so that's not a great start. So he's got work to do if he wants to improve, as Perez goes quicker.
Perez went quicker in that one.
So Perez has improved on his time. Not the quickest of the track so far, but Sainz is slower as well. So it's not a great start for either of them.
Is there a particular reason why they now might be slower?
I don't know really. They might have just not taken a corner as well. There's no obvious reason.
Nothing to do with the track, or
no. In theory, this should be when the track's absolutely at its quickest. This should be the perfect time for the drivers to go and put the quick lap in, but currently it's only Perez who's improved on his own personal time. And as I say that, Verstappen gets quickest in Sector 2, so he's made up for that lost time in Sector 1, but whether that's enough to...
Perez staying the same?
So Perez has improved on his own time, so he's another good lap, so he might improve on that P3. Sainz, though, is not looking great. He's got a green, but he's still not quickest sector. I mean, he'd probably improve on his P6, but he's not looking like a pole. So Verstappen's about to cross the line. He's provisional pole at the moment with a 1:29.7. See where Perez comes. Perez moves up to second, so he's just ahead of Leclerc. But we'll see. Sainz looking a bit slow here. I think he's missed out on pole there. So P4 for Sainz at the best really. We'll see what the others can do.
Okay, so currently it is provisional 1-2.
Right. I think that's it by looking by the Red Bull ones, because I think Leclerc stayed in the pit. So
I wonder why Leclerc stayed in the pit.
We might have missed that. Why he's decided to not cross the line. Maybe he'd missed the time crossing the line. Maybe that was his last quickest run. But so that's Verstappen pole. Perez second. Leclerc third,
he got out the car. He wasn't going to be doing another run. Okay. Some of the runs are out of sync. Odd.
That is odd. I don't know what the reason behind that is. I'm sure we'll find out soon. They might have just I don't know. There was something wrong with the car. They just decided that was the best they were going to do.
To be fair, so far it hasn't really made too much of a difference.
No, so we've got
still in third.
We've got Verstappen and Perez. So Perez nipped in ahead of Leclerc there. So then, yeah, it's interesting. We've got the 2 Red Bulls, then the 2 Ferraris, and then Alonso. So and then Russell and Hamilton P6 and 7, Stroll 8th, Ocon 9th, and then Hülkenberg 10th. So yeah, great result for Hülkenberg. There's a smiling Christian Horner there, so they're happy. But yeah, what a start for Verstappen really. P1 as a lot of people expected, and then I think that shows, doesn't it? That shows that the Red Bull car was just a cut above. I mean, there was a lot of talk about other teams catching up, but the fact that it's a front row lockout for Red Bull is obviously...
That's what you want.
Yeah, very encouraging for the first start of the season. And it's just a case of transferring that into the win tomorrow now.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's great for them to be defending as well from the front.
Yeah, definitely. Having both your drivers up there, that's ideal situation for them. So yeah, very good day for Red Bull for sure. Very good day for Red Bull.
A few question marks over Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to be happy with they could take some solace. They've locked out the second row, but yeah, I don't know if we missed it of why Leclerc chose to stay in the pits and got out of the car, but I'm sure there's a reason behind it. But yeah, he's starting P3 again, as we mentioned earlier. That's not terminal for his race. He can still try and catch up, but yeah, we'll sort of see what happens tomorrow now.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to be that there was a technical problem,
right? Okay.
Because of course he could have challenged for
yeah,
pole
that's
at that
the
point.
confusing thing, that why he chose not to come out. But if there's a problem with the car, then there's not much you can do. I mean, that's awful timing for Leclerc. He'd be frustrated that's happened just then. But I mean, even Sainz wasn't able to get close really to the Red Bull. So yeah, that really shows that the Red Bull is the quickest car, certainly on this track at least.
Yeah, and that will leave Charles Leclerc in third. We need to see what happened with Mercedes.
Yeah, I think, was it P6 and 7 off the top of my head? I think, yeah, I think that's probably sort of what we expected from them, really. Like, they weren't going to challenge, as we see it. Leclerc look over Verstappen as he celebrates his pole.
Absolutely fuming.
Not a great start to the season for him. But yeah, just a great start for Red Bull. Mercedes probably expected where they expected. Well, I think Alonso, I lost track of where he got and all that Verstappen Leclerc stuff. But yeah, I think a good day for Red Bull, good day for Alonso, good day for Haas as well, with Hülkenberg getting into the top 10.
Yeah, well, just to run through kind of that first batch of them. So it's Verstappen on pole, Perez second, Leclerc third, who didn't go out again. It's an all Ferrari second row with Sainz. Alonso is the best of the rest, ahead of the two Mercedes
right, okay.
cars.
Well, that's just a great result then for Alonso and Aston Martin to finish ahead of the Mercedes just shows that they're quick. Their speed was real, really.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant for them. And we'll be looking so forward to tomorrow and seeing what's going on. But Ferrari are going to want to get any issues they've got resolved quickly, because Charles Leclerc, I mean, we can see him now talking on screen. He probably won't be happy that he had to get out of the car.
That's dreadful timing for him, really. Yeah, you don't want a technical issue at that moment, but that's the way it goes, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we said, it's not the end of the world. He would have wanted to be at least in the top 2, but he can still fight tomorrow. There'll be a big battle, I'm sure. As long as I think Ferrari's main goal is now to not let the Red Bulls get too far away. They've got to keep the pressure on them early, because if the Red Bulls go off into the distance, that's them gone, really. You're never going to catch them. So,
and it's also keeping Mercedes at bay.
Yeah, they've got, obviously, last year they were looking forward all the time, but then Mercedes did creep up on them. So yeah, they've got to keep Alonso. I'm sure he's very happy where he's going to be. He's always been a driver not afraid to go for a big move, so he'd probably be diving into the first corner. But yeah, just an exciting grid, I think, really. I don't think you could ask for more, really. Like, a lot of the drivers up close together, and yeah, just exciting for the race tomorrow, really.
Yep, and who do you think's going to win?
I'll stick with Verstappen. I know it's the boring answer, but Paul, he looked a cut above everyone else, even his own teammate in the same car. So yeah, Verstappen looks like the obvious favourite so far. Okay,
and in terms of Mercedes, pressure on them, Toto Wolff?
Maybe a little bit, but I think this is sort of what they were expecting. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think they're going to develop well. I don't think they were that strong. I think the fact they had the porpoising issue really set them back, even into this year's car.
It's crazy, isn't it, that you think that would still be a problem?
Yeah, but they spent so much time fixing it while other teams were looking forward that they're still playing catch-up, really, even in these early races. So yeah, I'm not surprised they finished where they are. I think they'll be disappointed to finish behind the Aston Martin, but we saw in testing and then in practice as well that the Aston Martin's been a very quick car. So yeah, he's really just shown that's real.
Okay. Right, before we wrap up, just going to do a quick recap from everything we've learnt today, Sam.
Okay, yeah, so I think obviously the big story is Red Bull, like, job done for them. Verstappen top, Perez P2. Ferrari, they obviously had some issues. We'll wait to see exactly what that technical issue was, but Leclerc in P3, Sainz in P4, so it's not the end of the world for them. They can still improve on that, but obviously the big story as well, Alonso into P5, great result for Aston Martin, great result for Alonso, but it wasn't just Alonso in the top 10 either, Stroll as well, so that proves the Aston Martin car's very quick. Mercedes, not a great one for them, P6, sorry, P7, so they're sort of finishing where we expected to be, just that little bit off that pace. And if we look away from the P10, I think Pierre Gasly's got to be one of the big disappointments, the fact that he went out in the first round. Oscar Piastri as well, a new rookie, but in a McLaren car, so probably a bit more expectation than there was. Norris not maybe able to make it to the P10. And obviously, we've got to mention Nico Hülkenberg finishing in the top 10. It's just a great result, coming back into the sport after all those years, into a Haas, and doing that while I think his teammate went out in Q1. Yeah, a lot of stories on the grid, and just sort of more exciting for tomorrow, really.
Yeah, there's a lot for us to be watching tomorrow. Make sure you tune in and watch the Bahrain Grand Prix with us, the first one of the season. We're very, very excited. It's going to be great, and we'll be able to see exactly who does finish on pole. Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.